Juanita, for people who don't know who you are, what you're all about, can you give a bit of an introduction on where you're at and yeah, who you are?
So thanks, Emil, and thank you very much for having me. So just to start to understand why I do what I do, I'll just go back to the beginning. So when I was born, my mother was very traumatised by her life, that she would often be found passed out on the floor from Valium, leaving my brother, who was only 7 at the time, to care for me. So she was in so much despair that she didn't, her only coping mechanism was oblivion. So it was little wonder that she didn't notice how ill I was. And as a baby, I was so unwell with ear infections, and that damaged my ears so much that I lost hearing completely in one ear and I lost partial hearing in the other ear. And a major contributing factor to this ill health was passively inhaling 40 cigarettes per day from the time of utero until I was 2 years old. And then at the age of 2, I was placed into a home. So it wouldn't have helped that as a newborn baby, presumably due to all the coffee, I was unable to sleep either. And so I was just this very, very sick baby who had a mother that was oblivious, and if I was crying in pain, she wouldn't notice because she was so ill herself. And so, yeah, so that sort of just little, that was just sort of like the beginning of, coming into a family surrounded by trauma and addiction, because she was addicted to cigarettes and prescription medication. So she grew up in the 1940s and the 1950s New Zealand, and she was a victim of the social welfare system. She had grown up enduring physical, mental and sexual abuse. And her sister, my Aunt Ricky, who I lived with in my teens, battled alcohol addiction her whole life. So the trauma and addiction spreading from person to person, generation to generation in our family. So my mother was a highly an intelligent person, and she was also extremely sensitive. So as a young adult, she was forced to have shock treatment, which was the solution in those days, but it actually really caused long-lasting damage for her. So ultimately, she spent most of her life completely alone with cigarettes as her only companion until she passed away in a psychiatric home at the age of 67. So after growing up surrounded by this trauma and addiction, it wasn't surprising that trauma and addictions became my niche when I became a clinical hypnotherapist. So now I have worked with thousands of clients successfully to overcome unwanted habits and addictions. And I have created a 5-step system, which I now teach at the Academy of Therapeutic Hypnosis. And I've also put it in a book as well to reach more people. So this lays out my 5-step system. Is it a habit or an addiction? Which actually recently won a bronze award at the recent ELIT Awards, which is very, very exciting.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I could have easily gone down this path myself of, following that generational trauma and addiction myself. And it was when I was in my early 20s and I had a little bit of a love affair with alcohol. I was at a crossroads, and it was at that crossroads I could make a decision. Which way was I going to go? Was I going to just wallow in my pain and numb it? Or was I going to just focus on growing as a person, overcoming any trauma, healing myself, which I've been on that journey for the last 25 years or so.
Wow, that's a really, really strong introduction. I really appreciate you being so candid and opening up about what's brought you into where you are right now. At what point did you decide to go into a hypnotherapeutic route from that journey, from where you started?
Yeah, so just over about 7 years ago. So I think it just, trying so many different modalities myself in order to heal and work on myself, I just became fascinated by it all. And found hypnotherapy a very good healing modality. It helped me a lot. And so it just happened that an opportunity arose where that just presented itself, which felt right. And I thought, this sounds right. I'd love to do this. And so I just got into it, and I just trained and just jumped into my practice and built a client base very quickly. And it was just like all the doors opened. It was like it was meant to be. And And before it didn't take long to build up a full clinic, work with many clients, starting off with quit smoking, but just with my clients getting very, very good results with the quit smoking. Other people coming to me for other addictions like cocaine and marijuana and alcohol and gambling and sugar, and so it just started to build like that. And that's where I just working with so many people in such a short space of time. You get very experienced very quickly, and that's where I just sort of developed what I was doing and created my 5-step system.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump at the beginning in terms of what is hypnotherapy. If you could define hypnotherapy to someone who's never heard the term, or explain it to a child who has no idea what they think, what to think about it. Yeah, how would you explain it?
Okay, well, a lot of people come in to see me, and they all have this idea that maybe I'm going to get a watch and swing it back and forth. Even that was what they did about 50 years ago. So they did used to do that as an induction, but that was decades ago. And then a lot of people like to have a tease with me and say, you're going to make me cluck like a chicken. And some people are actually even quite nervous because they think maybe I'm going to take over their mind and I'm going to control their mind. And I just let them know, if I could control your mind, I wouldn't even be here because I'd be very wealthy. So it's none of those things. It's not like a stage show. I think it's because we see the stage show, we see TV, movies, and it's not like that at all. It's an ancient healing modality that is now actually at the cutting edge of becoming one of the most sought after natural therapeutic professions of the century. It's safe, it's natural yet powerful. So, and safe, it really is safe, because sometimes people are worried. I do get people that are worried that it's going to bring up something from their past. That would be called an abreaction. It's bringing up a post-traumatic stress from the past, and they're reliving it again. I've never had that, and people that I know that have been practicing hypnotherapy for years have never really experienced it. It can happen, but it's so rare that I don't really even know anyone who's had that experience of it. So it is very, very safe. It's you're in an awake state. It's a state of relaxation, and you're in complete control. I can't make anyone do something they don't want to do. And all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. All healing is self-healing. No, and so I just, I like to sort of let people know that you're just, they worry that I'm going to control them. And I just let them know, at the moment, if they come to me for smoking, the only thing that's controlling you now is the cigarettes. You're going to be taking back control, or whatever they're there for me, whatever they're there to see me for, whatever their issue is, that's what's controlling them. And by working with me, they're going to take back control, take back their power, and be free from that issue. So definitely they're not being controlled at all. I'm just a coach, just guiding them through with what they're wanting to achieve. So it's very much, you could call hypnosis guided visualization. So your brain, so it's just a natural state that you go into all the time. So your brain wave frequency goes into that state 7 to 10 times a day. So, you've got the different levels of brain frequency. You're awake, and that's beta brain waves, and then you're asleep, and that's delta brain waves, and then in between you're in a trance state, and that's alpha and theta. And so you don't just stay awake in that beta state all day, wide awake and focused and concentrated. Sometimes you just dip down and you might be daydreaming. You're in a trance state, or you might be in a driving trance. You drive from A to B and you wonder, I don't even remember that drive. How did I get there? You're in a driving trance. Or you might be engrossed in a good movie and you don't notice the time because you've been in a TV trance. Or you're engrossed in a good book and you actually feel, when you read a book and you actually feel like you're actually in that story. It's actually happening. It's actually real. Yeah. So you're just in that, you're in that trance state, engrossed in that book. It's like a guided visualization.
So it's kind of like what people might call, I'm in the zone, where you lose sense of time and space, and it's just like, that's what it is. That's interesting. Okay, so.
And that's a great place to be, by the way, being in the zone.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think there's a bunch of research. I can't remember what they call it these days, but where you get into a zone where you lose a sense, like musicians have this in certain areas where they're just in the moment. And
Absolutely.
I guess what I'm hearing you say is that what hypnotherapists are trained to do is they guide a visual, kind of like a visualization process that the person's in control with the entire time. They're incredibly relaxed and they're able to work on the things that they otherwise wouldn't work on because their mind is always in so many different places.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you can get the same results yourself. Like I sometimes run half-day webinars to teach people self-hypnosis. So you can get the results you want through just doing a meditation practice, but putting suggestions in. And it's a self-hypnosis practice as well. Like meditation, you'd be practicing it with the suggestions and you could really get some changes. But if you're working one-on-one with a clinical hypnotherapist who's got very good techniques and very good tools, and it's specifically tailored to you, what they're doing can really be very, very powerful and very effective in a very short, condensed space of time. So I can get some profound changes with my clients in 4 sessions. Working with, I have what I call my transformation program, and that's people coming to me with trauma or anxiety or depression or maybe a combination of those things. And, we can really work down deep, get down deep and uplift stuff that's been dormant for a long time. And so we're going back to what I said before, sometimes people can be a bit worried, is it going to bring up stuff that I don't remember and I'm going to be traumatized again? Your unconscious mind's not going to present anything to you that's unsafe. Sometimes we clear stuff. It's not going to allow you to remember something if it's not going to serve you. So sometimes when working with clients, we clear past memories on an unconscious level, and we don't necessarily need to remember them. And so when we do that, working directly with the unconscious, the client finds that, they just feel so much better. They feel more expansive and they feel lighter and they feel happier and they no longer have the stuff going on that was weighing them down. So it's very powerful.
Is there a significant difference between something like mindfulness or meditation and something like hypnosis?
Yes, so, I talk a lot to my clients about mindfulness, just practicing being present at any opportune moment when they can. And obviously, meditation practice is a good way to do that as well. So with hypnosis, it's adding in the suggestions. So you're in that same state, but you're adding in the suggestions as well. So your brainwaves are in the same state. What I do find, though, a lot of clients do come to me and they're worried. They wonder what's this experience going to be like. Maybe they think I'm just going to go like that and they're going to be zonked out and they're not going to remember. And to be honest, sometimes people go down very deep where they don't remember much. And definitely clients do lose sense of space and time, which some people meditating might find that too. They lose sense of space and time, right? So sometimes, I might have a client in a session for an hour and they think it went for 5 minutes, but they remember everything. They remember the whole entire session, but they managed to compress it into 5 minutes. And then other people, they just feel like they're just sitting there listening to the sound of my voice and they feel very, very aware, very conscious, and they're very aware of the time. They're just in a very, very light trance. And that's fine. Even if you're in a light trance or a deep trance, it makes no difference to the outcome. You're still going to get an amazing result.
All right. You mentioned the term induction. What's an induction in hypnotherapy? Yeah.
So when you first start the session, just to relax. So that can be, getting the client to do a progressive physical body relaxation through their body from the top of their head to the tip of their toes. And that could be one technique for an induction. It's just really getting them to relax before. But most people are probably familiar with the deepener. So, the next step after the induction, you get them to go down, maybe down the stairs or down, just counting down or so forth. So the induction is before the deepener. It's just getting them to relax, like let go of any thoughts, relax their body, focus on their breathing, just different things like that.
So an example, I mean, you mentioned the going down the steps. Are you kind of visualizing yourself walking down some steps to a particular place, or what does that look like?
Yeah, exactly. So so a deepener, that's just getting them to go down. They're all very, very relaxed in the induction. They're just sort of, very much like if you're in a meditative state. But going down and doing the deepener just gets them really down deep. Where have you ever had a hypnotherapy session? Have you ever tried a hypnotherapy session before?
I've been to I think a 1 or 2 day training on a type of hypnotherapy, but I can't remember exactly what it was. And the way that I experienced it is we kind of sat down, but it was more of a allowing whatever came up in your mind to come up when they were doing the induction sort of thing. There wasn't necessarily any guided like get deep down into it, but I have heard that people have done that, and I didn't really pursue it very much after that at that particular point. That's why I'm really interested to hear more about it here.
Yeah, and so there's lots of different approaches, as you can see, and lots of different approaches for induction, for a deepener. You can even, with a deepener, you can even ascend, get the client to count up instead of down. And it doesn't have to be going downstairs. It can just be drifting down, or it can be going down a lift or anything. So it's just that sense of going deeper.
Okay, and that's the first part of any kind of meditative practice. Is that correct? Hypnotherapeutic practice. Yes.
Yeah.
And then what generally happens after that? The induction's done. The person's super relaxed and they're in that state. They're in that trance state. So their mind's wide open. So we haven't spoken yet about why hypnotherapy works so well, is because you're working directly with the unconscious mind. And so the unconscious mind is about 90 to 95% of our mind, while the conscious mind is 5 to 10% of our mind. And so when you're trying to work just with your conscious mind, which is all that we are have got control of, and it's very, very difficult because you're competing with that unconscious mind. So that unconscious mind is 95% of your mind or 90% of your mind, and thousands of times more powerful. So for example, if I'm working with someone for smoking, consciously, half the people that come to me can't stand it. It makes them sick. Sometimes they've got emphysema. They hate the taste. They hate everything about it. They can't afford it. Can they just stop? No, they can't stop. It's only about 12% of people can quit smoking with their willpower. The rest of the people, even if they can't stand it and it makes them sick, and so many people come to me, they've been struggling to quit for years. They're going around circles. They try patches, they try cold turkey, they try prescription medication, and they're going around circles because all those methods are just trying to quit with their conscious mind, while their unconscious mind has got this deeply ingrained habit. And that deeply ingrained habit is just keeping them smoking. But the problem is it's because it's the unconscious mind, it's out of their control. It's an unconscious behavior. They've got very little or no control over that. And I think most people can relate to that feeling somewhere. They might not be able to relate to smoking if they've never been a smoker, but they might be able to relate to it somewhere else in their life. So I get a lot of people coming to me for food addictions. Okay, so they know that they need to lose a clothing size and they want to lose a clothing size and they're doing all the right things, and then they have dinner and suddenly they can't help it. They're just having this block of chocolate and they know that it's just sabotaging all their hard work, but they've got no control over it. They just have to go and have that, and they've got that overwhelming urge, that desire, then that craving for chocolate. So it's just a habit. It's a pattern that they've created. Associations, triggers, it's all in the unconscious mind. And
even though they really don't want to eat the chocolate because they want to lose the weight, it's out of their control. So when people come and see me for habits and addictions, it's the same thing, whatever they're coming to see me for, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or gambling or chocolate or nail biting. Another one's nail biting. So someone might not be able to relate to smoking or to chocolate, but maybe they have the problem with the nail biting. Like they don't want to bite their nails because it's painful and it's unsightly, but it's just their fingers are on their mouth and it's out of their control.
What about things like bodily tics or movements, involuntary movements?
Yeah, well, that's all part of like unconscious behaviour. Yeah, so I personally haven't had anyone come to me for something like that, but the thing is, the unconscious mind's in every cell of your body, and so that mind-body connection is very powerful, but often completely underrated.
Okay, so you mentioned the unconscious mind. You've mentioned it makes up between 90 to 95% of your mind per se. How can you define that? Like, is there from a biological or a neurobiological point of view, or just a way of understanding that you found helpful?
That's a really, really hard one to answer, because most people, when you ask most people, do you have a mind? And they'll say, well, yeah. And then if you ask most people, where is your mind? And most people will just be, yeah.
Yeah.
But so we don't really know a lot about the unconscious mind. It's something that I'm very, very interested in myself because of the work I do, but I just find the whole topic fascinating. But, there's scientific research and scientific proof behind, scientific studies behind this, that the unconscious mind's, it's throughout your body. So, if you, what you think about in your mind, you'll feel in your body.
Yes, certainly. So like that mind-body connection. I mean, one thing that comes in mind, I do a lot of work and a lot of research around neurobiology of conscious experiences, unconscious experiences, things like the traumatic stress responses and all that sort of stuff. So when you speak about things like the unconscious mind, it makes me kind of think about implicit type memories that are stored within the nervous system that we may not have conscious awareness of, but that nevertheless can influence our day-to-day behavior. An example of this could be that your body just randomly stops in the middle of a path and you're not quite sure why you've stopped, and then you kind of look around and you see a snake towards the side of the path, and your body's reacted or reacted in a particular way that you're not consciously aware of, but your brain is nevertheless processing and keeping cues of. So these are some of the things that come. I don't know whether that's an accurate description of what a hypnotherapist would conceptualize when they're talking about the unconscious mind, but from a neurobiological approach, this is what my mind goes to. Does that sound in any way useful to conceptualize it like that, or is there something else?
Yeah, so I mean, the unconscious mind, so you've got your unconscious mind, as I said, it's 95% of your mind or 90% of your mind. And until the age of 7, our mind's wide open. And so from the day we're born, so, babies are only born with 2 fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of being dropped. And so from the day we're born, we're just basically downloading everything into our unconscious mind. So those formative years are very critical on a child's programming. And so we're just downloading the environment around us, how our mother treats us, how our parents interact, how our siblings treat us, the school we went to, the TV we watched, the area we grew up in, the church we went to, whatever it may be. Everything around us, we're just downloading. So often I might get a client coming to me for anxiety, for example, and actually, I've another example, but I had a client come to me recently and she had a fear of dogs. And so we're trying to work out, because when you work with a phobia, there's often, you're looking at, what past experiences have caused this phobia to be created. And so she couldn't remember any incident with a dog. But when she was growing up, her mother, every time they saw a dog, her mother would just freak out and run away. So a child growing up, they might fall over, and what do? They fall over, and the first thing they do is look at their primary caregiver to see their reaction. So if your primary caregiver is very nervous and freaks out because you've fallen over, so the child's going to mimic that and imitate that and take that on board. Well, if you're just very relaxed and calm about it, then they're going to be very relaxed and calm about it. And so that's how anxiety can get passed on from generation to generation if you've got an anxious parent. So with the phobia, this lady with the phobia of dogs, she just saw the reaction, her mum's reaction around dogs while she was growing up, and that's what installed the fear of dogs into her.
And how did you, what was the outcome of your time with her?
So working directly with the unconscious mind, you're creating those programs in there, you're downloading, you also, not only is your unconscious mind made up of past experiences and past memories, but also everything you learn and practice as well. And so you learn something new and you practice something new, and it just becomes stored into your unconscious, and it becomes automatic. Like, for example, you learned to walk and it was very difficult to start with, and you fell over and you got up and then you walked a step and you fell over and you got up and then you were walking and then you're running. You're not going to forget how to walk. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and think, how do I walk again? Because it's something you learned and it's stored in your unconscious. And it's the same with driving a car. When you started driving a car, it was very, very difficult, and you had to think about 6 things at once, and you had to focus and you had to concentrate. And now you can get in a car and have an engrossed conversation with someone, and the car still drives automatically because it's something that you do on autopilot. It's our body, that mind-body connection. What we've been talking about is, you might not remember. I mean, I don't know if you remember the days of the old phones, like those old dial phones, or you can go to an ATM. Sometimes you don't know the numbers, but you go to put in the number, and then your body remembers it, even though you wouldn't be able to tell the number to someone, right? So going back, so it's just programs. So when I worked with this lady for the fear of dogs, and when I work with other people for phobias, because hypnosis is a very effective way to overcome a phobia. So we're able to basically, through hypnosis, go back to those old memories of when she was scared of a dog, and just change that reaction to that old program.
Can you tell our viewers how something like that might look like if they have a particular phobia, like a phobia of driving, or something's happened before and then they kind of, it comes up? How would a hypnotherapist, or how would you kind of approach that to install new, like you mentioned, suggestibility? Is that part of what you're referring to?
Yeah, definitely suggestibility. You can do that, but really, when I work with people for phobias, because the thing is, like, as we've said, like, the unconscious mind is thousands of times more powerful, and so a fear of flying is a very common phobia. So someone might go into a plane and consciously they know, I'm safe on this plane. Statistically, I'm safe, but unconsciously, their unconscious mind's running a different program. So they get on the plane and they might take a Valium, so they numb that fear, or they might have some tools to manage it, or they might just have a full-blown panic attack and they have to get off the plane. But they've programmed in there from past experiences. Maybe they had some traumatic flight experiences, whatever it was from past experience. They've got that program that flying is dangerous. And so the reason they get onto a plane and they start to react, maybe it's a racing heart, sweaty hands, just sheer terror and panic, is because their unconscious mind's trying to keep them safe, and they think that flying's dangerous. And so they're just trying to say, hey, you're in danger, you're getting on a plane, and, flying's use dangerous. And so that's why they start to panic, because you get, you get anxious, and you get panic attacks because your unconscious mind is trying to keep you safe, and it thinks you're in danger. So if I was working with someone for a phobia, I go back to, is this the answer you want? Like exactly what I do. So I go back to, I'll get 3 past memories where they were terrified by whatever it is, and then we go back to those memories in hypnosis in trance state, and change that reaction. It's disassociated. So part of them is looking at the part of them that's having that experience, but it's feeling very, very relaxed.
Okay.
So you do a disassociated approach going back to that memory.
I'm considering a recent experience I had with a client of mine where there was a fear of driving, and one thing that I asked my client to do was to imagine that they were in the air looking down at the car as it was approaching a particular part of the road that they were anxious about. And from that point, my client just didn't feel any anxiety. And then when they will get kind of closer to it, then the body will change. And so that sense of watching oneself in the car while driving was an approach that dissociated, to use your words, or disassociated the observer's role and then the person who's being anxious in the picture. Does that sound like a similar kind of experience that you're describing? I was just doing it as part of a visualization exercise.
Yeah, they're very, very similar. Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds very similar. And there's many different ways you can do that. But you just want to work on that a little bit more and just go back and you can rewind back through that experience and then have, go through that, observe that experience again, feeling very calm.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is really cool. So for a person who may have a fear of flying, for example, it's a matter of, all right, let's see if you can bring up that memory of you, let's just say, having a panic attack in the plane, but you're watching yourself instead of being the person re-experiencing it. You're kind of seeing it from an outsider's point of view. So it's a very creative experience for that person, and they're not part of it, so they can kind of see it one step backwards. And because they're in what you call a trance state, like they've been inducted, they're relaxed, they can bring up that memory and see it from a different point of view. And then it's just going back there and revisiting that stress multiple times in a relaxed state. And then when they come out of that, okay, I feel like I've been doing some informal hypnotherapy with some of my clients.
It sounds like it. Exactly. Exactly. So it's just changing that reaction to that old program and have a different response to that old program, because it's just a program.
Wow. Okay. So you've mentioned program a few times, but we haven't defined it yet. When you say program, what do you mean by changing a program? Is that like an experience that you're talking about, or
you could call it, I think you could even call it a memory or an experience.
Okay. All right, cool.
All
right, so I want to see if we can go back to another area. You mentioned your upbringing, and you mentioned that you had lots of different types of therapeutic experiences until you settled on hypnotherapy, which helped you at the time. Would you say that would you like to talk about that, your experiences with different therapies, and then how hypnotherapy helped you more so than other therapies? Was that something you feel comfortable doing?
I mean, it was a long time ago.
That's okay.
I mean, it's been a lifetime ago. It's been a lifetime of trying different things. But I mean, I've always been drawn to different natural therapies. So, from massage to Reiki to, meditation retreats and then some more conventional as well. I definitely find more natural therapies. I do personally. I sort of lean towards more of them. I've had better results with doing more natural therapies than conventional personally.
You spoke about the system that you use in your practice, and you've written a book about it. Can you guide our viewers through your particular system, how it's similar or different to other systems that might be out there, that they might experience if they search up hypnotherapist on Google or what have you? I'd love to hear about that.
Okay, so my 5-step system is basically, first of all, you've got the discovery, because when people come to me for addictions, and I get a wide range of people coming to me for all sorts of things, you need to discover what's going on and have the correct approach for that. And there's different approaches. So some people, so when people come to me for habits and addictions, for some people it's just a habit. It's just a deeply ingrained habit that they've created through repetition over a certain period of time. And then through that discovery, sometimes it's a habit, but sometimes it's actually something deeper going on. It's just a symptom of something deeper going on. So that's really the first step. And, working with that client and asking the right questions, going through, getting a picture of what's going on, and making a decision on the right approach for that client. So that's the first step. So when I'm working with people for cigarettes, for example, it's very unlikely that it's a symptom of something deeper going on. So sometimes people are worried about that. They think, I'm smoking because, I've got PTSD, or I'm smoking because I'm stressed all the time and I can't stop. But what I've found just from working with literally thousands of smokers is that even if people have got PTSD or anxiety or depression, it doesn't align with them with them having any issues with quitting, because it's just usually, it's very, very, very unlikely that there's going to be a deeper root cause happening, and it's usually that they've just got this habit. So, a lot of people that come to me, they've got a lot of other issues going on, but they just quit smoking one session, no problem. So it actually doesn't align. Well, when someone comes to me for alcohol or food, it's very, very important that I listen very, very carefully for that with, the first step, the discovery, because a lot of the time when they've got these food issues or the alcohol issues, there's something deeper going on there's a root cause issue. It's like self-medicating. And so we really need to work with that deep root cause issue first as part of the treatment. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I work, So I work with a lot of people for alcohol, and sometimes they come to me and it's just, they've just got into the habit of getting home from work, opening a bottle of wine, cooking dinner, having a couple of glasses, and then before they know it, for the last 10 years, they've been drinking 1 to 2 bottles of wine every single night, and they just can't stop. It's out of their control, but they've got nothing else going on. It's just very, very habitual. And so this is a very powerful, effective way to break that deeply ingrained habit. So sometimes they have tried different step programs because they've got all the triggers and the associations with the alcohol, and they've tried these step programs, which is basically really trying to get them to eliminate any triggers. So in order for them to avoid the alcohol, they have to really change their life around so they're not being triggered. So for example, if sitting at home every night was a major trigger to opening a bottle of wine, go out and do an activity every night so that they, where they can't drink alcohol, and they won't drink that bottle of wine. But that's very, very hard. You're using willpower. And the minute you are at home, sitting at home, sitting at home in that environment, you're going to be triggered. You're going to be back on the alcohol again. So hypnotherapy is a very effective way to actually go directly into the unconscious, rather than just trying to work with that conscious mind, go directly into the unconscious and just break that deeply ingrained habit. And then what they find after the treatment for breaking the habit is that they've got that freedom, that they've got that control. It's like, wow, everybody's drinking, I don't need to drink. So it's just very powerful. Now, if it is a deeper issue going on and there's a deeper trauma, then that's really not going to work, because the next time they're feeling the pain, they're going to just sabotage themselves and self-medicate. And so we work on that deeper stuff. And what I find when I do work with people who are drinking because there's something deeper going on, I find that before we even get to the alcohol, a lot of them have actually cut back a lot on that, reduced the alcohol a lot, maybe had some alcohol-free days, different things like that. And then at the end of that treatment, we just break that habit and any associations of the alcohol.
Yeah, it's actually quite a common thing when a person first reaches out for help. There's often a window of time where they begin to make their own changes, regardless of the modality that you're using, just because they've taken that first step. And so it doesn't surprise me when you mention that you start off within that discovery phase and you try to unpack it, and then when you do kind of progress with that, person's already made changes with their addiction and their habits, because even though you haven't kind of started off and worked on that in particular, it's power of human will and decision making, and even just that sense of being inspired for change. And that might happen all underneath the surface. I'm using the word will, but there's a lot more that we can kind of conceptualize there. What do you do after that?
You've got the discovery of what's going on, and then the decision point is step 2. And then 3 is managing expectations with the client for during and after the treatment, so they know what to expect. For example, if someone comes to me for quit smoking, and step 3 is managing the expectations, then they have to support themselves. So it's going to work very well. So people come to me for quit smoking. They've been trying to quit for years. Nothing works. They've got the craving. So what's happening is they don't want to smoke, but then they get emotional, mental, and physical cravings. And what they actually think most of the time is they think that it's the nicotine. But it's not the nicotine. It's actually the habit and the unconscious mind. And so their unconscious mind is actually going, what are you doing? You need to smoke. And so, and it's trying to remind them that it's time to smoke with cravings physically, mentally, emotionally. And so some people scratch their head and think, really, nicotine's not addictive, because you always hear about nicotine addiction. But definitely, I can promise you that nicotine's not addictive. So once people have had the treatment, even though the nicotine's in their body for the next 1 to 3 days, they've got no cravings, because it wasn't coming from the nicotine. It's just like if someone goes on a long flight overseas, they've got no cravings on the plane, right? So otherwise you'd get all these people on the plane with nicotine addiction, with feeling very, very ill, but that doesn't happen. People are fine on a plane. As soon as the plane lands, suddenly they've got a craving to have a cigarette. So managing expectations for someone that's a smoker, it's going to work. They're going to walk out. They're going to find they've got that control. They've got that freedom, sometimes for the first time in decades, usually actually. But they have to support themselves. So when they walk out, they can't just go and, if they think about it, have a cigarette, because what they're going to do is they're actually going to open up the old neural pathways and bring back the habit. So it's very important they support themselves and allow the session to process. And if they have a problem, they need to call me, and so we can do a second session. Not many people need a second session, but it's there for them if they need it. So if I didn't do this very, very important step, and manage expectations, and also telling them what the experience of the hypnosis is going to be like, that's part of managing the expectations. Because if people just felt like they were sitting there listening to my voice, if I don't manage the expectations, they're going to think, I don't think that really worked. I don't think I was hypnotized. But if I manage their expectations and explain to them, how what's it going to feel like during the treatment, then then they're like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to feel. So it's very, very important to have the conversations as part of the treatment, and not just, sit them on a bed and do a hypnotherapy session and say, see you later, because, if they don't know what to expect, then it is possible that it's just going to fail. Well, if people realize they've got to allow the session to process, there might be a few ups and downs, they might have a few thoughts. If they're struggling at all, no problem, we sort it out the second session. If they understand all of that and how it works, then they're going to be smoke-free. Absolutely. And as long as they understand that they can't ever choose to have a cigarette again, then they're going to find that they're a non-smoker for the rest of their life, and it's really easy, and they've got no cravings, and they've got no desire, and they've got no urge. So that's all part of that step, is managing those expectations so they understand what they need to do, their part in it, because it's 50% me, but it's 50% the client as well. They have to do their part, and they also have to want it as well. There's no point people coming to me and having a treatment with me if they don't really want to quit smoking, or if they don't really want to stop drinking alcohol. So that's all part of those managing the expectations. And then the step after that is after that, the actual treatment, and which is obviously the hypnotherapy session itself. And then the step after that is the post treatment after the session, which I've spoken to them about when managing expectations too. Just supporting themselves ongoing, letting me know if they need an extra hypnotherapy session as part of their treatment, because it's there for them if they need it, and knowing what to do to stay free and in control.
Okay. Is it possible for these steps to happen in one session?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So someone could essentially come to you, say, I want to quit smoking. You go through all of this, and in one session, they have made that commitment to quit smoking, and then it lasts.
Yes, absolutely. I've worked with thousands of smokers, and the process that I use, the treatment I use, is actually a 97% success rate. A lot of hypnotherapists have very different approaches, and some work and some don't. And some hypnotherapists know how to do quit smoking, and some haven't been trained in it. So when people come through our school and train with us, they're quit smoking specialists, and they get very, very good results. And sometimes, you're going to get the occasional person where, they don't walk out and they don't walk out a non-smoker. They walk out and there's other stuff going on. And so part of being a good quit smoking specialist is to know how to troubleshoot, to know what to do if you do have to work further with a client. And there's different approaches for that. And that, and I've just learnt those different approaches just with experience, just, having these clients that have had issues and being able to troubleshoot with them, and then just having the experience and knowing what to do in the future with that. So sometimes there's different things you have to do. I've even had to, resort to, sometimes it's parts therapy we've got to do. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. So if someone is resistant, are you familiar with that, parts therapy?
So it may go by different names, but we work with parts all the time in terms of identifying different parts of oneself. Yeah. So if someone comes to me for gambling or quit smoking or food or whatever it is, and they're not getting the result, they're still struggling, it's because they're made up of lots of different parts, and there's a part of them that still wants to smoke or eat the chocolate or whatever it is. So it's very easy to resolve with a further treatment by working on that part that feels uncomfortable quitting smoking. I mean, I've had a client before who, after a session for quit smoking, has been very upset. I don't know why. She's saying, I'm crying and I can't stop crying. I don't know why I'm so upset. She's grieving the loss of smoking. And so we can work on that part that's grieving that loss, and we can also release the sadness and the grief and the upset and anything she's feeling. And that works very well with hypnotherapy, right? Any negative emotions that people are feeling, I can literally during a session, just get them to release all that stuff. And in the end, they literally can feel it leaving their body. And then they no longer have those negative emotions because we've released it. Is that done in a similar process that you described earlier with the induction and the observing that part of yourself and coming at it at a relaxed state, is that the common denominator for hypnotic therapy, that you're observing that part? And
no, that was just for the phobic reaction. That's just a technique that I would use sometimes in certain situations for certain things if it's the right approach. But there's lots of different techniques that you can use to get results for, and so might have a few of them in one treatment.
Can you describe a technique or the techniques that would work for someone who wants to quit smoking in, say, a session? Like what could they expect if they're smoking, they want to get rid of the smoking, they're highly motivated, they go to see yourself? What could they expect from you in terms of what the session looks like?
The reason it's so powerful is we've got overlay over overlay over overlay, so we've actually got a ton of stuff in there. The whole treatment, including when they first come in the office, because that pre-talk part is extremely important as well, as in per the 5 steps. Every step is important because you're sort of hypnotising them in the pre-talk as well, reframing things that they might be saying, etc., and post a hypnotherapy session as well. So the actual session and what we've fine-tuned and developed over many years, which is so powerful and effective, there's a ton of things in there. So I have taught quite a few therapists the treatment, and they're just astounded because it's really overlay over overlay. So that's why. Plus, one point it's very important is you really need to specifically tailor it for the individual. So you need to really put a lot of, you're asking a lot of questions in the discovery, step 1, the discovery. You're asking them lots and lots of questions, so you've got a clear picture of what's going on. And we're working with the feeling mind, so it's very important to find out everything about how they're feeling as well, like what they do. What they don't like about smoking are the negatives. Most people want to quit smoking because of their families, the money, and their health. And it's similar for gambling and alcohol and drugs as well. So so all the negatives of why they don't want to stay where they are, and then all the positives, what they're looking forward to. So you're getting all their words. Anything they say to you, use their words. You don't want to reframe it and make assumptions. You're just using their words and putting it into the session. That's what makes it very, very powerful as well. And then using lots of different techniques and approaches. And we do some NLP stuff as well. That's kind of like sort of throughout the treatment as well. Like I often will use NLP techniques as part of a treatment as well.
For our viewers who aren't aware of what NLP is, do you mind just giving a bit of a summary on what you're referring to?
Yeah, so neuro-linguistic programming, and it's like you're just basically working directly with the unconscious rewiring as well. So, but instead of you can, and there's different processes for that, but instead of putting them into a trance state to do that, you're just doing those processes with them in a waking state.
Yeah, it's kind of like an integrative approach that deals with certain areas of yourself that you're not consciously aware of, and you want to change certain habits or certain things that you're kind of struggling with, whether that's trauma or addiction or what have you. What's been the most surprising story that's come across in your experience around changes that people have made with hypnotherapy?
Oh, I'm always astounded. I shouldn't be now after doing this for years, but I'm always just so amazed at how effective and transformational people's results are. Gosh, I can't even, there's just got so many examples. I can't even think of anything off the top of my head. I
remember
there's just so many. I've got quite a few case studies in my book. And one of my case studies in my book was a client of mine who he had an addiction to cocaine for many years, and it was destroying his career, his relationship, quality time with his son. He was spending about $100,000 a year on cocaine, and so he was up every night. It meant his work was suffering, his health was suffering because he wasn't, doing physical fitness. He wasn't eating properly. It was obviously causing issues in his relationship, and he was just on that path of about to lose his family and his business and everything. And we just did we did 2 treatments and two hypnotherapy sessions as part of the treatment. And after the first, he was just found he had that freedom, he had that control. He, straight after the seeing me, he went out with his friends, which was a major trigger. Before he'd had no control, he'd had to, take cocaine, and he just found, wow, I don't need to have this. And then a few months later, he sort of did get back into a little bit. And so then he came back for the second session, and he's been free from it now for the last couple of years. And so, so he had tried rehab before he saw me, and that was just a temporary, that was just like a temporary solution, because obviously that programming was still there. So as soon as he left the rehab and he went back to his environment where he had all those triggers and associations and patterns, he was just back into it again, and that's what happened. So he spent thousands of dollars on rehab, and he just came to me, and we were able to sort it out very, very quickly for him.
Yeah, I remember that's fascinating, because it goes to show that that particular experience, going from such a destructive part of who he was to making those changes in his life, that's big. When it comes, I remember you posted on LinkedIn, one of your posts, you detailed a story of a lady who had a fear of going to the dentist, and there she was able to use some sort of visualization or self-hypnosis, and she didn't need any pain killers or anything. Anesthetic.
Yeah, so that was just a little example of self-hypnosis. So she didn't actually have a fear of going to the dentist, but it's just it was just a little story to show the power of self-hypnosis and working with the unconscious mind, because she went to the dentist because she was getting the deep clean done. And if you're familiar with the deep clean, it's excruciating because it's going right down deep into the gums and the nerve endings, and you need an anesthetic for it. Most people need an anesthetic, but she decided she'd walk her talk and just use self-hypnosis to be able to be pain-free during the deep cleaning without anesthetic. And so she just imagined that she was sitting on a beach, not the dentist chair. The torch, the light above her was the sun. The spray of the water was the ocean. The drilling of the sound of the drill was the seagulls. And she was able to have that procedure done without anesthetic. And the only interruption was the dentist just saying to her every so often, "Are you sure you don't need anesthetic?" So she was in this bliss, and he'd be coming in going, "Are you sure you don't need it?" And she's like, no, I'm fine. And so she was able to just prove that, the power of the mind and not being able to feel pain. She knew it was there, but she couldn't feel it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. That's an interesting one, when a person's able to bring themselves to such a state where they don't feel a drill coming down into the nerve endings. It kind of reminds me of certain meditative practices of various monks who get to a point where they don't feel any pain because of the state of mind that they're in at that particular time. Though I haven't experienced any of this sort of stuff personally. Yeah, well, look, the thing is,
50 years ago, 70 years ago, doctors used to use hypnosis in their practices a lot more than now. Like sometimes I'll get an older client and they'll say they remember, you know, going to their doctor and having a hypnotherapy session for smoking or something like that. So in the 1950s in America, one of the forefathers of modern hypnotherapy, Dave Ellman, actually trained all the medical practitioners, like all the surgeons and the dentists and so forth, on hypnosis for pain relief.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What kind of techniques did they learn? Like, what was it, kind of like an induction relaxation technique?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, I'm not really sure exactly what techniques they learned. Pain isn't my area of expertise, although I'm saying that, you know, sometimes if I I know how to do the basics for it. So if I've got someone who comes in and they've got a migraine, I can easily do a little process on them to release that migraine very easily. So things like that. Remember the mind-body connection. So, I mean, when I was doing it, I was running a course a few months ago, and one of my students, he accidentally ate something which he reacted to, and he knew from past experience his stomach went out, it doubled in size, and he started to sweat profusely, and he started to feel very, very nauseous and very ill. And he went to the chemist to get something, but he said, this is going to stay with me for the next 48 hours. And I got one of the other students to actually do a process on him to release that. And at the end of the process, his stomach went right down and he cooled down and he felt fine. Very powerful stuff. Yeah.
How do you explain that?
It's the mind-body connection. I've actually had it's happened recently. I had a client and she came to me, she hadn't been able to eat for 2 months. 2 months because her throat was pretty much closed over. So all she could do was drink water and, you know, have smoothies and soups, and that was it. And every day she'd try to eat something, but it just gets stuck in her throat or in her mouth. And it was terrifying for her. And she went to different specialists and tried to get this sorted out. And they all just end up saying, look, this is in your mind. So back to that mind-body connection, this is all in your mind. So she came in and worked with me, and we worked with the deeper down trauma. We released the anxiety. We did some inner child work, and actually, to be honest, after one session, she came and she said, I'm eating again. So, and that had been 2 months of struggling to eat. So that's that mind-body connection, because that's actually quite common, you know, your throat closing over and not being able to eat, and it's a form of anxiety.
And from a medical point of view, it leaves medical professionals, doctors, scratching their heads, like we tried this and this and this, and this person goes and sees, you know, a hypnotherapist or another natural therapist for one session, and, you know, things change. It shows the power.
It's the same. It's the same as if you, you know, if you have a heart attack, what's the heart specialist going to say to you? The heart specialist is going to say, you need to rest and you can't get stressed. Because what will happen, and why do they say that? They say that because they know if you're getting stressful thoughts, you're going to have another heart attack. So they're actually acknowledging the mind-body connection, even if they're not realizing that. And my daughter, she's got some digestive health issues that we've been trying to resolve, and definitely we need to really manage and make sure that she's not getting stressed. I mean, she's in year 11, and that age, you know, all kids that age have got some level of anxiety, so we really have to manage that. And she has her stress and anxiety coach that she can call on. Not me, because she really doesn't want to talk to her mother about it, but someone else. She's got a stress and anxiety coach to manage that. And it's actually a combination. She really has to watch what she's eating too. So the nutrition plays a big part. But if she's anxious or stressed, that flares up. And that's what, you know, if people have got IBS, which is very prevalent, you know, part of their healing plan is to you know, make sure they don't have that stress and the anxiety in their life, and they're relaxed and they're calm and they're looking after themselves mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, it just goes to show. Yeah, it does go to show the integrative approach from a medical as well as a natural point of view. I had a psychiatrist on the show, Dr. James Greenblatt, who's a functional psychiatrist, which is to say that he's got the medical training, but he integrates that with a natural approach in terms of treating mental health conditions as well, and specializes in things like ADHD, which is really interesting because there's certain things that you can do from a natural point of view, you know, the types of food that you eat and
Sure.
the nutrition that you're getting and how that can really change. And the thing that he mentioned was the most surprising for him throughout his career was how the medical professionals were so hesitant to acknowledge the interaction between, you know, non-traditional and traditional forms of practice. And that's what I hear you saying in our time today, when it comes to there's more than just going to visit a GP and only taking that one advice. It's not just mean don't go and see your GP. It's just to mean that there are other options, complementary medicine options that can be useful as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess one final question I'd like to run by you is are there people where hypnotherapy would not work on?
So that's a very common question. A lot of people are concerned and worried, can I be hypnotized? I've actually even had people come to me saying, I've been told by a hypnotherapist that I can't be hypnotized. And they've had no problem. Everybody can be hypnotized because we spoke about the brain frequencies. You know, you're in beta, and then you're at delta when you're asleep. And to go from awake to asleep, you have to go through that trance state. So everybody falls asleep. So that means everybody can be hypnotized because they're going through that trance state. So that's people can be resistant to hypnotherapy. People can just sit there and go, I refuse to do this. Absolutely. But no one's going to go to the trouble to book in and want those changes. So you can stop yourself from being hypnotized, but everyone can go into that state. I think maybe once or twice over the years I've been working in clinic, I've had people that have been very resistant for whatever reason. I think they've had some sort of preconceived notion, fear with hypnotherapy. And so what I've done in those situations is I've actually just said, look, we're not going to worry about hypnotherapy. We're just going to do a guided visualization. And so I've actually done the same thing, but we just didn't call it hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
Because it was just that word hypnotherapy that was just causing the issue. And then by the end of that, by the time you're talking to them and you're building up that rapport and you're explaining, making it very down to earth and logical, and explaining the conscious mind and unconscious mind, and what's happening when you're being hypnotized. That people during the first session, it's no longer relevant anymore because you're working with them and talking to them and communicating with them. They see it and then they relax enough because you just you called it a visualization.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. You just reframe something, even just the term trance can sound very, very daunting for people.
Yes,
so you just reframe that in terms of, someone might be used to it. A hypnotherapist will be used to saying something like, I'm going to put you in a trance right now. And everyone's like, nah, I don't want to do that. But say, we're going to go into a more relaxed state and still do the same thing. You're kind of like, you're just doing the same thing. I guess what I'm hearing you say is if you've got a functioning nervous system, you can benefit from hypnotherapy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And anyone, as long as people want that change in their life, it's all self-healing, it's all self-hypnosis. So, really the people, I'm only seeing the people that want that change, obviously. So that's why it's highly effective. People are only coming to me because they want that change. They're not going to pay money and spend that time if they don't want that change. So it's probably a little bit biased in that way. It's so highly effective because people are wanting it.
Yeah, well, it goes to show that if you want to make changes in your life and you know where to look and what's going to be useful for you, you're very you're on board. You can change. Anyone who's listening, you can change if you set your mind to it. You want to move forward and you find the place to go. Juanita, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, where can they find you?
Sure. So my website is activatehypnotherapy.com.au, and that's probably, and all my details are there. So,
Awesome.
my mobile's there, my Calendly link for a Zoom, courtesy Zoom consultation is there. My email address is there. So everything's there, Activate Hypnotherapy. And that's Activate, not Active.
All right, awesome. And you're also on the socials, like LinkedIn. I've seen you on LinkedIn as well. If people want to if people are on there, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Juanita. I hope if you're interested, if our viewers are interested in learning more about her, I'd guide you to her website. And thank you very much. I look forward to moving this forward.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.